Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agulhas Current Affairs, a marine biology podcast set in South Africa with me as one of your hosts, Dr. Nelson Miranda of Geekoscopy, and
And Dr. Nelson Miranda of Argonaut Science. We have something fun for today.
indeed, speaking of Nelson Miranda of Argonaut Science, yeah, we do. Why don't you explain, Nelson?
Yeah, there's this assumption that all scientists sort of know everything about everything, and particularly they know what other scientists do. That's a big assumption,
yeah,
don't you think?
yeah, having eventually become a scientist, it's a very fairly big assumption that I think people are not. If it's not part of their everyday lives, you sort of think that, oh, this is a person, usually like it's the white lab coat and they know everything. But it's, I think, very far from the truth.
So even though we know each other as people and we are friends and we've been friends for a very long time, we're going to try and actually guess what what we do, like what the other person does.
I mean, yeah, we spent a lot of time in the past with each other, although we never really worked together, even though we were in the same lab. And you left academia. I stuck around for a while, but I think you've done more science than me, especially ecological stuff. So I'm going to attempt to guess, Nelson Miranda of Argonaut Science, what exactly you do, especially on a day-to-day basis. So my idea is that, for one, you're now an entrepreneur and a scientist. So you're no longer part of in totality, standardly part of a governmental organization, although you are affiliated with them, as every kind of scientist is. And your company, Argonaut Science, that you created along with your wife and my other friend, Nasreen, is, well, you guys like to say that it is a company that tries to bring people and science together, and conservation and naturalism, and that the natural world is for everybody. I think that's what I remember the tagline is. And with that, you take people on tours. You teach people how to do stuff in the water, like diving, free diving, like scientific diving, maybe, I think, stuff like that. And then when you're not doing that type of stuff, I think always whenever you have a company and a business, there's always other things you need to do to pay the bills. So I think from the company economic side, you do things like consulting for other organizations, maybe universities, and creating things as entrepreneurs do. Because we just discussed that you created something with a partner. I think day to day, you're probably just managing your time and scheduling out things you need to do and places you need to go. You and Naz as a couple are very, very mobile. You go all over the place. So yeah, I think you do a lot of things science
All right.
involved. When it comes to what you do for research, I know you're a malacologist by trade. I actually don't know, because I haven't asked you whether you're like actively involved in your own research. So I actually don't know, but I know you're expert in alien invasive snails. At least you did your PhD on that. I think that pretty much sums up Nelson Miranda in my mind as a scientist.
Yeah. Oh, that was not a bad guess. I think I'm gonna do really badly trying to guess what you do now. By comparison, that was not a bad guess at all. And I think it'd be fun for you to imagine. Okay, let's go with malacology, right? What do you think? And yes, I am actually still involved, right? So let's just narrow it down and focus on malacology. What do you think what I would do in a standard day?
Well, I mean, like, malacology is a very broad term. It just means like you work with snails, right? And that can mean like a variety of things. I know, like, your main training is in ecology, so you go out and collect or count snails. and look at densities and stuff like that. And I'm sure you collaborate with other people who are working with other stuff. So probably like if you're looking at like snails in relation to other things like vegetation, like mangroves and things like that. So maybe you might be working with people who work with sediment or stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure you've probably done description work or like taxonomical work, like um, either identifying new species or describing new species or renaming new species. Um, what else? I don't, maybe you done genetic stuff. I don't know. Or maybe you've collaborated with. There's, it's such a broad term. You could do anything actually. With, as long as snails are involved.
Maybe because I've done quite a few varied projects, your guesses do strike true.
Right.
So I have done taxonomic work. So there are snails are very complicated things. It's not just one kind that you just find in your backyard,
Hmm.
and it's usually a terrestrial snail. That's what people think about. Mollusks are very, very diverse. um, Group of
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and gastropods, which are the snail-like things. So if you're thinking about a snail, you're probably thinking about something that has a foot, fleshy thing, and then maybe you're thinking about some sort of shell, that kind of goes like in a helical sort of fashion. Yeah, that's what most people think about. And yet, there are so many different kinds of species, and it's so difficult to find consensus. What should we call all of these very similar looking things?
Yeah.
And to add complication, there are alien invasive snails that we accidentally or on purpose introduce, and sometimes we mistake those established snail populations that have now been introduced into a new area. We even confuse them for native snails, and we start describing them as a new species of native snail. Meanwhile, it's actually an old species of alien snail that exists elsewhere in the world and was introduced. Um, so definitely genetics is something you have to get into to
Hmm.
tell things apart, because if you just look at them, they look very similar. And what's more, they adapt to the environment. I should do like a podcast about snails only,
Yeah.
because I believe snails to be one of the best models of biology to understand the
They're
world.
cool. Yeah.
Every type of science touches upon snails in some way. Snails are found everywhere in the world. Yes, everywhere. Trust me, there'll be a snail somewhere, even the most inhospitable areas.
Yeah.
Which people actually don't realize that they think snails are pretty, I don't know, fragile.
Hmm.
But actually, they are forced to be reckoned with, and we can get a lot of information from them.
Hmm.
So the soft tissues, the mucus, the chemical side of things, that's very interesting. But also the shells, that connects into the fossil record. You can see that it's like I like snails, and of course I want to do things with snails. But you've actually guessed quite right. We have, for example, very this year we've described and did the DNA barcoding for a new aquatic snail species that was found in Joburg. And this snail has been found all over the globe literally in the last few years, and in South Africa as well. So it's one of the recently noticed snails that have been spread all over the world.
Yeah. I just
So that's my
realized that like
latest.
I was describing
Yeah.
things in my mind, but like half of the things are like behind you right now, and I just noticed.
Clues, clues,
Yeah,
clues.
it was like I
No, for
was on easy
sure.
mode the whole time. I just didn't realize it.
Look, and snails are. We were just talking about how there's a lot of plastic research,
Hmm.
and so research involving plastics and litter. And some of the things that we do with people when we take them into the field is actually we use citizen science to record the occurrence of life on the litter, on the plastics and all the other litter that you find. So that's a very nice thing that everyone can get into, and it really helps scientists. The way you take a picture with your smartphone, hopefully you have one that works, and it gives a geotag, so it's a location, it's a time, and it's a picture which will help the scientists to start to maybe identify what it is that you found. And that's like really good information, and it's something that's also fun to do. So I think people these days like to go into, get together in groups and do cleanups. It's a great opportunity, and it's a nice thing to do on top of that, to actually pay attention to the life that lives in the litter. The litter bugs.
It's a new way to refer to a litter bug, sure. Okay. So.
Yeah, and okay, so now you kind of did three things. You kind of like at least identify three things that I do, right? What about things I don't do? Can you guess? Because it's very broad, but maybe can you guess what I don't do? These three things.
Jeez. So like you want me to say things that people think you might be doing, but you don't do. So like.
Yeah, maybe that's a good one.
Because you could not be doing a lot of things like this. It's very vague. So what do I think somebody who thinks, like, if they just thought of what you represent to them, like just a guy on the street, what they think you do? Well, for one, I don't think you spend a lot of time like mixing chemicals and stuff in the lab right now. Is that something you're not doing currently?
That's right. I'm not spending a lot of time in the lab at all. Yeah. I spend time in a, I've got I do electronics and things. So I got a little mini lab in that sense, but it's not your usual like a wet lab or a lab with benches and microscopes and things like that. I hire or use the facilities of the universities. Only when certain projects call for that. So on a day-to-day basis, I don't. How about Argonaut Science? What do you think? Because a lot of people think we are or do certain things.
I see. Okay. What about environmental impact assessments? Do you actually do that?
Yeah. So we are subcontracted to be part of an environmental impact assessment because we are specialists for certain, for example, for mangroves, right? So sometimes we have to even go outside of South Africa. So there are not many mangroves, relatively speaking, in South Africa, but certainly in the rest of Africa, there are opportunities for that. Yeah. And in Asia, so sometimes, they're looking for an expert and they want to subcontract us, then I fly off, and I do a bit of that work.
Do you actually do any writing on the beach? Like the whole 4-hour work week type of thing, and then you can be working and then you be writing on the beach and the pictures. Do you actually do that? Have you ever went to the beach and did writing?
Like poetically sitting on the beach.
Yeah,
you using it as my
office. You know the scene. Yeah, you know the scene, the classic scene.
No. I use no, I use my office as my office. I'm very privileged right now that I can actually see the beach from my window. So where I'm renting right now, that's possible. But no, I'd keep my one laptop that I have away from
water
the field.
And sand. Yeah,
as much as possible.
100%. Yeah, it's to me, it's such a weird idea. Reading maybe, but if you're out there, you might as well be in the water. If you're gonna be out on the beach. What else would you not be doing on a typical day? This is a tough one. It's so broad.
It is
It's
tough.
so broad.
It is tough.
Jeez.
I'll tell you one thing. So because we do so many different things, we certainly get confused for a non-profit organization.
Oh,
Often.
okay.
We work with a lot of non-profit
Yeah.
organizations, but we
But you
are
yourself are
very
not
straightforward.
an NPO. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
No, no, no,
Because
no. And so I mean,
because you guys are for-profit like enterprises. It's not. You're not.
yeah, it's a very simple small business. So there's been a lot of confusion. I think they blurred the lines a lot. It's understandable that you get confused between non-profit and for-profit, and there's also like confusion regarding doing things for as a passion versus doing things professionally. And there's also blurred lines over there. I think it's all related to the confusion.
Have you ever actually studied
And,
an Argonaut or a paper nautilus, even though it's in your name?
right? I have a project, right, that is on standby, looking at the shell of the Argonaut. So with taking samples from all over museums from older shells, comparing them with recent shells that have been washed up, right? And looking at the isotope composition of the shells, which gives you an idea of the climatic conditions and how they might be changing the environment, how it might be changing in the ocean. So we actually have that project that is on standby because there's no funding. Sad face. So
so you're not actually working on it.
So the way
it's not something that you're doing.
Not in the moment. So I've done all of the groundwork. I know where to get all the samples. All of the introduction. The rationale for it. It's all ready. But with the way that we seek funding, or the way that I do funding for research these days, is more related to business. So what is actually needed in the industry. So other projects, like for example the development of a data logger that is needed in fisheries right now, that takes precedence. So we look to fund those projects first, and any portions of our profit that goes to research and development within our small business then gets channeled to that. So my time and my and the funds have to be we have to unfortunately do the more profitable, or the more on demand sort of projects. Whereas these like fun projects, like the namesake project we like to call it, which is also probably really, it might actually contribute important knowledge, ironically. But it's not something that's on demand, and it's not something that at the moment I've had
people
the time
to
write research proposals for. Because people think that you just get money from somewhere. Yeah, that's the trick, isn't it? It's not so easy to get the money.
No.
And it requires, I may ask for it from non-profit organizations sometimes, like funds, or from governmental bodies, like, as the National Research Foundation. But in those cases, it's like you'd be competing in a sense, isn't it, with current institutions and researchers. And we're not trying to compete. We're trying to actually provide solutions for things that are in demand right now.
For sure. Is there anything that I missed besides what we covered?
I think you actually, I think you had an unfair advantage with all of the,
I know. The thing is, I know all of that stuff without the poster, though. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not.
So there you go. Actually knowing me
actually
over
knowing
the years,
you,
you've actually paid attention, obviously, and it's going to be very embarrassing when I try to guess what you do on a day-to-day basis.
It's gonna be weird, especially because I don't like when I'm chatting with my friends. I don't talk much about my work because it's outside of office hours, and we don't really work together. a
Yeah.
lot. So I think I know what you do because like I can see online most of it, and then like it's a big part of like who you are, I suppose. Whereas I don't
Mm.
like. There's no really no science thing behind me like there's behind you. Although there is a snail shell
Yeah. No.
that I think fell. I was gonna point it out. No, I lost my abalone. I was gonna ask you whether
See,
you work
they
with
are
abalone.
everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna point out.
They
They're
are
everywhere.
everywhere. Huh?
Have you ever worked with
No, I
abalone?
don't work with abalone.
Polemon.
No, no,
Yeah, that's interesting because that is a
no.
snail.
That's not something
Yeah.
I do. Absolutely,
Mm.
it's definitely a snail, and there's definitely industry, and there's a lot of people working on it. We actually know people who did their PhDs on it,
Mm.
and there's a lot of people. It's definitely like it's a hot topic in research,
Is it currently? I
because
don't
it's
hear
also
much
linked.
about it now.
Oh, I think it's always going to be a hot topic. But I'll tell you something. I work with. If you don't
Weird
hear
bit.
things about snails that often on a
Mm.
day-to-day basis, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing: the 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 field that I have expertise in is actually linked with a notoriously well, this is known to be a neglected field. You know, because the snails that I have expertise in are the intermediate hosts for snail fever,
Mm.
bilharzia,
Mm.
right,
Mm.
or schistosomiasis, and it's a disease that is part of the cohort of diseases known as the neglected tropical diseases, right? So, in order to study this disease, you have to know the snail because the snail's life cycle is crucial for the
Mm.
disease to actually occur.
Yeah.
Okay, and it kills, like, it's very hard to tell. That's the problem. How many people it kills?
Mm.
But the estimates range from 100,000 to 300,000 or something like
Wow.
that
Jeez.
per
That's a
year.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's killing a lot of people. And yet it's a neglected
Even
tropical
though it
disease. So
hasn't
this has
been
actually
studied
become,
much. That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now there are studies, but there ought to be continuous research into
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? And for example, in South Africa, people love to do things outdoors, and hopefully we'll be doing more things outdoors. And one of the things that you do is you go swimming in the dam, right? Maybe you're
Mm.
doing a triathlon or you're doing like a swimming thing. And people have actually been infected with bilharzia, So it would be, probably a good thing to send someone like me to scope out the
Yeah.
area, to
Yeah.
assess, to do safety, and to create, because, parallel to that will be research that links, people from different sort of
Mm. Mm.
backgrounds, because we're thinking about the athletes who pay a lot of money and they come from fairly privileged, generally speaking, privileged background. And then we're talking about the people who live in the adjacent areas, in the catchments of the dams
Yeah.
and,
Mm.
places that are generally below some, they are low income, they are
Mm.
people that are disadvantaged. And to bring that together in a project would be very interesting. But again, it depends on demand. And funny enough, demand is an interesting thing. People would rather not hear about it and just have a good time and pay for their,
Yeah. Yeah. The holiday.
pay for
Yeah.
their sports
Yeah.
event than to have to pay some guy for, to assess, the risks and to do research into, the area, which would be probably the best thing for everyone involved.
Mm.
That's the way the world
Yeah,
works, I
that's
suppose.
classic society.
Um, that's
Yeah.
classic society for sure. And it's like everyone wants to hear from an expert. This, I guess, I'm gonna guess that this is true for you as well. Do you get requests for advice on your subject, and it's like, can you please tell me this, and this. It's not an easy question. It's like a question that requires basically an expert
An
to
expert to
answer.
do it.
And yeah, and it requires, it's not an easy. It's like usually it's like a general question which then you give a general answer to, but that's probably not going to be good enough for the specific application.
Yeah.
But basically, what I'm saying is, do you often get asked to give advice for free?
Advice for free.
Consulting.
Yeah. Me personally,
consulting for free.
Not so, because I'm not in a field where like consultants are needed. Like you work in a very like naturalistic, ecological way, so there are like there's people who like need you to do stuff. Like, whereas me, I do more blue sky work, I think, than you do. That's like it's good to know, and it adds to it increases the breadth of knowledge. But it's not stuff necessarily that anybody who has the money to pay for it needs to know. So that's where I differ in the kind of work that I do compared to you. But I think we'll leave that for another episode, because this is now already at 26 minutes. So that's
I'm sure we can
let's cap it off and do
can
another episode.
cap it off.
So any closing thoughts, Nelson?
I think you actually did really well. You guessed exactly right.
Yes. Well, what's my grade? Do I get an A+?
Well done. I think you get an A+. Well done. That was great. You probably, I would say, almost exactly what I get up to. Well done. I'm impressed.
Well, thanks. I think I pay enough attention. And yeah, so if you want to find Nelson, where can you find all Nelson's stuff?
Well, you can look for us, Argonaut Science, on the great wide web. There's a little Argonaut over there. And I go by Nelsopod on the gram. But
and
we're Argonaut Science also on Instagram. And on Twitter, although we don't tweet that much. But,
I know.
You can find us.
I was just because I just made social, so now you can find Argonaut Science at Agulhas Current Affairs at Agulhas Current, because Agulhas Current Affairs is too long. So now we are at Agulhas Current on Twitter. And I noticed that like Naz's account is just not there anymore. So like, okay, you guys are not doing Twitter, which is fair. I think your guys' brand is more visual, so like Instagram works better for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram, Facebook, just good old Google.
Well, yeah, you can go find @Nelsopod or @Argonaut Science on the internet. And I think we'll drop it there. Thanks for joining. And cheers.
Yeah, it was awesome. That was fun. Cheers.